this is Hi, this is Bart Sharp and Becoming Quantum Conscious at United Public Radio Network 107.7 and UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 105.3 on YouTube, Facebook, and Roku. You can actually watch us on television. Just go to United Public Radio Network and check us out there. But I always mess up the countdown. This is my 15th show. I feel like my aunt who would do these home movies in the 60s, and she didn't know if the camera was working because she never had really practiced with the camera. So she'd be looking at the camera saying, "Does this work?" And of course it's running. So every home movie she made always started with her nose and nose hairs the beginning of the video, and then she'd turn it around and all the kids would be doing their goofy stuff. That's kind of how I feel right now in this moment with United Public Radio Network and Becoming Quantum Conscious, that we are in an experiment and we learn through our mistakes. And there was no mistake in bringing in this next guest who I've known forever. And we're going to be talking about how to activate your innate ability to sense energy with Fara Future. And that is his real name, Fara Future. And Fara Future has been an engineer innovating in the field of computer technology. He added to this focus metaphysical healing after he had a stacked assigned entity. And for those who don't know, that would be a ghost complemented with other entities working against him. And once this was removed at a metaphysics fair, he found that his narcolepsy-like symptoms completely disappeared that very day. And after that, he was hooked into this crazy energy work. And so over the past 17 years from this experience, Fara Future has been like an obsessed mad scientist, or I like to say a weird scientist, because weird is extraordinary. And everything that Fracka does, from energy work to computer technology and all of these interesting programs that he's developed in the computer world. I keep thinking of Twitter Pirate, which was a really cool experiment. But he's been exploring the physical, non-physical, and energy work realms, developing a variety of tools to create more awareness and emotional freedom for others. And being an avid personal development student already before the metaphysical work, this revolution about the power of changing something in a non-physical world was like pouring fuel on the fire, on this passion for adventure that is Fara Future. He just dove right into this magic of this non-physical consciousness and awareness and went right down where as far as the rabbit hole goes. And that really describes Fracka, is how far can he take it? How far can he go? And, I just love being around him because it's never boring. There's always high energy. And there's always questions that are stimulated that I haven't thought of. So welcome to the show, Fara Future. I'm really happy that you're here today.
Thank you, Bart. I appreciate that. And what Bart didn't add into that intro is that he actually was the person that took off that entity. So he was my opening to this magical world. I was definitely in that world before. I mean, I've seen ghosts. I actually called an alien when I was a little kid. It showed up in my bedroom that another person saw. So I'm really excited today to talk about sensing energy. And I actually did a flip on it. I'm going to give you the 17 ways to completely trash and shut off your ability to sense energy, because this is our realm. The sensing energy, the non-physical, we are designed for that. We're doing it all the time. And most of our energy gets used to kind of invert ourselves to where we pretend like we can't feel it. So I got a little story. It's called Neil the Astronaut in his spacesuit and the day he got cloned. So Neil was an astronaut. Maybe he was the one that went to the moon. I don't know. But Neil the astronaut, he goes up in space, and all of a sudden he's on a spaceship, right? And another version that looks just like him appears next to him. And he's like, oh my gosh, what just happened? Did I just get cloned? And he like turns to the guy and he's like, who are you? And he's like, I'm Neil. It's like, you can't be Neil. I'm Neil. It's like, no, I'm Neil. But the interesting thing about his clone didn't have any like memories, didn't have any of the history that Neil had, but looked like him, spoke English, like, knew about the being on the spaceship and stuff like that. So Neil's like, calls back to NASA's like, I've been cloned. I think it's an alien. I don't know. What should I do? And they're like, just play along, don't mess things up. So pretty much they go through the whole, mission that he had. And he does a spacewalk. And then, Neil's clone does the spacewalk. They land on the moon. Neil's clone lands on the moon. And they're going through all, all these different environments. It's bright and sunny and it's dark. And all this, and they're both in their spacesuits. He's completely cloned. And then eventually it's like, Neil's like, what do we do? Calling NASA. And NASA's like, well, let's bring him back. But we're going to clear out all the people. No people allowed. We don't want to freak him out, right? Because he just knows you and he's calm about that. Let's just do that. So Neil and his clone comes back to Earth, right? But the interesting thing, when they were away, his clone was going to take off the spacesuit. And Neil was like, don't take off the spacesuit. Because when you're in space, you can't take off the spacesuit. You die. Right? Because you're in such extreme environments. But now they get back to Earth, and Neil was like, I'm going to take off my spacesuit. And the clone's like, no, freaking out. Like, you can't take off the spacesuit. It's bad. It's bad. And he's like, oh, man, crap. I told him not to take off the spacesuit. He's like, oh, okay. And the clone's like, well, let's explore this world too. Not realizing, like, Neil's like, dude, I live here. Like, this is home. This isn't another world. But the clone thinks it's a mission. So they explore Earth, right? It's been cleared out. They go to the sandy deserts and they experience the deserts, right? And Neil's telling the clone of like, oh my gosh, you should feel the sand. It's so hot. And trying to explain what it's like to actually feel this if he wasn't in the spacesuit. And the clone's like, I feel the sand, but kind of feels like it's 70, like it's always been. And then they go to the Arctic and he's like, oh, this snow, it's so cold and it's this. And he's like, oh, it'd be really freezing if we're out here. And the clone's like, I don't know. It feels like it's 70. And then they go to the ocean. They go underwater into the ocean and they see all the fish. And the clone's like, this is amazing. And Neil's like, oh my gosh, like you'd have to have some kind of breathing apparatus because you can't breathe underwater. And the clone's like, I can breathe fine, right? So lo and behold, basically the situation is the clone is in a spacesuit and doesn't have any of these experiences that Neil wants him to experience. Because he's like, oh my gosh, if you just weren't in a spacesuit, what would you feel? And that's kind of like, that's setting up the story, what we're going to go into, because it's like we've put on a spacesuit. Your ability to sense all these energies, you have all these abilities, and I could like tell you about them, but it'd be like me telling you, while you're wearing a spacesuit. So that's why I'm going to give you the 17 different ways in which we completely trash our energy and shut off our ability to sense energy. Because that's like putting on a spacesuit. And once you decide to take off the spacesuit, like once that clone decided to take off the spacesuit, his whole world would change. Because now the desert would be hot. And it wouldn't be 70 inside. He'd be like, it's hot. The sand's hot. And then when he goes into the Arctic, you're like, oh, the Arctic's cold. It's freezing. You instantly would get an idea of like, whoa, that's sensing energy. He goes underwater and he tries to take a deep breath. He's going to know what salt water feels like in his lungs, which is way different than the spacesuit. So that's my little story about Neil.
Yeah, it's a wonderful story. And, I was just thinking about all the emotions that we try to block ourselves from. And we want a spacesuit or we want something to protect so much not to feel something because we've judged it as right or wrong or good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
And we need a spacesuit, or people think that, because it was too much. And also with somebody like Fracka, Fracka is kind of like a Tesla cart incarnation. In other words, in my theory, there's people on this planet that maybe came from other planets, and I really think that Fracka is probably kin to Nikola Tesla, or they came from the same planet. They have the same type of electrical like consciousness, and that is a totally different way to see life, with the good parts of it, the bad parts of it, the ugly parts of it. But that's how it is. You're an electrical being, much like Nikola Tesla and probably some of these other brilliant people out there in the world doing all of these fantastical electrical inventions and discoveries. We could call you a computer geek multiplied by 100.
Well, thank you. But like you said, of like, it is that thing of like wearing a spacesuit. Like we want to protect, like there's something that happened. We put up like this kind of force field. We want to protect ourselves. But imagine if you came to Earth and you wore a spacesuit, and what that would be like. I mean, imagine hugging another person in a spacesuit. Probably wouldn't be very exciting. Imagine going swimming in a spacesuit. You'd be like, it's not the same experience. So when you start taking off the spacesuit, life can become so much deeper and more spectacular. And there are the pitfalls of like, breathing in salt water. So it's kind of like knowing when to pay attention. So we're going to start opening that, because you were wired for that. Like Neil's clone, when he opened the spacesuit, he wouldn't have to be taught how to feel the hot desert. He would instantly be feeling it. So
yeah,
jump into list of 17, and then we can talk about it.
As long as you don't die, it's all good.
Yeah. We're not going to die on this list. Trust me. This will just crack the door open, and then you can go through and crack it as much as you want. So the 17 top ways to trash your energy, shut off your ability to sense. First one is assuming everything is love and light, because it's kind of the flip of like, I don't want to feel anything. Okay, I'm just going to feel everything and make it all labeled love and light. It's the same kind of whitewashing. I'm not going to feel the differences. Second one, not knowing anything about chakras. We've got energy centers. So just, I don't going to know anything about chakras. Pay attention to them. There's all different types of systems. There's all different types of various chakras, chakra systems. But that's a great entry point to just get an idea.
It is, and I think it's just the beginning, because when we start to look at those 7, then we start to go, well, some people have chakras above their heads. Some people, they even have them underground. One person has told me that there's 188,000 possible energy centers. I work with about 13 different chakras currently. And it's a journey. I mean, they're just basically kind of like a map into getting into your energetic being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like, so it's not even so much of like, hey, here are the ones, this is how it is. It's more just having, if you want to, one of the ways to trash your energy is just not know any of them. Because it's really about experiencing and choosing which ones resonate with you. What is your knowing say? Hey, those 7 are most important. Those 13, those 188,000.
So what chakras do you have the most affinity to? Being you're an electrical being, we're exact opposites. I'm more of an earth-based being, and I'm doing earth work all the time, amongst other things. This has developed over the years, and Fracka is an electrical being. So what are the ones you really like?
Well, I'm going to make it, I want so everybody else can participate here. This book happens to have 7 and colored chakra systems. So look at this book and choose which one that you most resonate. If I said right now and I looked at it and I chose one, polarity. So I'm resonating with the top chakra, which is your crown, but then also the root chakra. So the 2 most extreme opposites, which does explain me, those 2 I would say, at least right now today, are the 2 I'm resonating with. So Root was then very physical, was always an athlete, but then also very, spiritual.
So one of the things you don't know about Fracka yet is that he's living in a high rise in Pittsburgh currently. However, he spent 3 years living in the woods in a solar powered trailer in a big truck so he could have internet access wherever he went and all the electrical things that an electrical planet being needs. But he was in the woods all the time. So how did that affect your first chakra and what was that like?
It was amazing. Absolutely amazing. Awesome. There is so much going on out in nature. Like the amount of energy and information that's coming in is off the charts. The big thing that I think that I was led to that was healing trauma. Because I'd gone through a ton of trauma and it was healing trauma. That was a trauma healing. And then once you get past like that first safe, it's basically, I call it the safety gate. Once you get past safe, like once it's like, now it's safe to X, Y, and Z, whether it's safe to love, safe to matter, safe to be worthy. Those are the core that people really bump against. But once it's actually safe to now go experience the world, which, oh my gosh, it just happens to relate to the spacesuit thing. Like we put the spacesuit on to be safe. But once it's safe, you come out, now your world can change. But when everything is safety, safety, safety of like, this is dangerous, it makes it hard to be adventurous because you're always kind of in that traumatic state of like, I want to go do that, but I'm going to have to be freaked out while I go do it.
So the woods allowed you to take your spacesuit off and really feel things. Is that what I'm getting?
Yeah. I mean, I think it was incredible. It healed. It was so healing, like immensely insane healing, but then also it was expansive and there's a lot of realizations about like kind of like this, all like there's 17 list. Like I had all these realizations about, or not, I had thoughts of like, I think this is happening. Like these different energy systems are in play. But once I was traveling the US and like experiencing them happen and changing, and it just all brought together of like, because a lot of times we come from this place of like, is this real? Is this really happening? And it's like, oh yeah, this is really happening.
Tune in to different places in the United States, not only the forest, but other places that you had not realized before because maybe your body had kind of, I don't want to say calmed down, but maybe tuned into another level.
Wait, say that again. I didn't hear the first part.
Your body tuned into another level of awareness through the calming that the forest provided you.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. The awareness. Well, I feel like a lot of the awareness was there. It allowed me to trust it. It wasn't so much that it came online. It's more, it was online and I was doing everything to turn it off because having it be traumatic and be in the city, it was too overwhelming. And by getting into the forest, the more protected place, it was like almost like I could start experiencing what was in there already. It's not like it was new and it came in, it was there. And now I could like kind of, oh, wait a second. I can sense out that way. Oh, I can sense out. Oh, and that to get to where you could go to like a more kind of a dense energy and intense energy and not be reactive to where it hurt, to where you're just like, oh, that's just intensity as opposed to that's pain.
Okay. So what was it like before you went into the forest when you lived in an urban center in the suburbs, South Austin to be exact? What was that like compared to the forest?
I would probably say distraction. That sums it up is distraction. Is like needing some form of distraction. That actually getting calm was painful. If that made sense, like, doing meditations was painful because it opened me, like I was too sensitive and all those things would cause the sensitivity to increase. And I was suffering from like, kind of like having a real bad sunburn and going out into the sun more. It's like needed to recover to then be able to. So,
yeah, I think that's really true with so many people that are particularly extra sensitive. They become overwhelmed and their spacesuit can't protect them enough, so to
Oh
speak.
yeah. Yeah, you're not protect, like you're feeling it all. You're just using you to kind of stop it, but it's all going in and it's all happening. You don't actually, it doesn't actually block anything. So that's the thing. Is like when you're doing the blocking, you're not actually blocking it. You're just blocking that you're doing that. And then you kind of get locked into this jail that you've created. But yet you still know all that stuff because you have to know it to block it. So it just gets you all, and it gets you doubting yourself. It gets you not believing, you get those sensations, but I can't trust that. I can't trust that. I can't trust that. So that's the thing of like, once you stop doing that, all of a sudden you start realizing how much you actually can sense.
Yes, indeed. I'm going to keep you distracted from getting to your 17 points, but I do want to point out one thing. This is Fara Future. If you want to check Fracka out, just Google fracka.com. And that's all you got to do. And that's Fracka. And this is Fara Future, and we're on United Public Radio Network, 107.7, and UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3, out of the beautiful city of New Orleans, Louisiana. I am in Austin, Texas, and Fracka is in Pittsburgh in a high rise. And I don't think he could ever live in a high rise if he hadn't had this forest experience to help. From what I gather, it's like you really got to connect with your root and second chakra in a way you never really had before. And also, one other thing, if you have questions for Fracka, please ask, and we can put them up there, and he will do his best to answer them. I'm distracting you from these 17 points, and you're only on number 2.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you some of this quicker. We could, because each one doesn't. I mean, it's more there. It's really which one resonates with you to then kind of creak open. The second one is knowing nothing about auras, which is like another bubble. And I want to dictate of like, this is what an aura is and this is how it works. It's more of just not like there's so many systems about aura, is picking one and seeing, does that resonate with you? And just get an idea that there is this energy system called an aura, and it really does affect and how it affects energy. And like just starting to wake up to that, oh, wait, that's in place too. There's this thing called an aura. So that's just another piece of like just completely pretending like that doesn't exist is not helping you sense energy. So the next is completely ignoring the difference between a clean and a messy room. This is just one that you could easily find in your house or someplace, is like, how do you feel when your room's messy? And how do you feel when it's clean without projection? And notice, like, if your room's more messy than it is clean, or more clean than messy, that's going to tell you subconsciously what you resonate more with. But it's also just knowing of like, how do I start feeling if my room gets more messy or gets more clean? And that's just one way to open up of like, but if you completely ignore that, oh, it doesn't matter if it's clutter and it doesn't matter if it's clean. But you'll find out if you take that moment to sense of like, wait a second, do I feel actually more calm in a cluttered space, or do I feel more calm in a clean space? And without the projection of like, oh, well, clean's better, messy's bad. No. What are you doing and how do you feel? That's another way. Another one is completely ignoring the weather, because that is a massive change in energy. Whether it's storming outside, whether it's sunny, it's a massive change in energy, and it's happening to all the people around you, which are affected by that energy. It doesn't mean that, oh, it's sunny day, it's a good day, it's a rainy day, it's a bad day. It's really noticing, how do you respond to that? Which days do you most resonate with? What parts of you? Because once you start realizing that, yes, you're going to be affected by the weather. You get to choose your response to that effect, but it's just to realize like, hey, wait, does the sunny day lift me up or push me down? And not have a projection that has to be any way, just noticing of like, oh, how am I responding to the weather? The next one, another big one, is your waking state and your sleeping state. Like that's a major difference. Like when you're awake, like now consciously, and then when you're asleep, that's a major difference that every day we go through. Well, hopefully every day that we go from this waking state to a sleeping state. So paying attention that like that is a difference. That is a major energy change that most of us are just ignoring that is occurring, but we're radically going through it.
Or we're fighting it, as opposed. And I always advise people is before you start to get into your rush of the day of doing work or whatever, and a lot of us can't. We have other beings that we're hold accountable. But to have 30 minutes after you've waken up to just meditate, because you're going to have your most powerful meditations at that time, and you're going to start to enjoy what that parasympathetic nervous system is, that sleep is activated. In fact, that's what sleep is about, is being in the parasympathetic. But if we can teach ourselves how to have that while we're awake, that's a big step into coming into consciousness. It's an opportunity to learn what that vibration is. And it just takes practice of meditating. And in the mornings when you're kind of on that between the worlds, it's the most opportune time to feel it and to be it.
Yeah. And just being aware that it's happening. And you can even be aware of like even if you wake up in the morning and there's an anxiety of like, I'm engaging the day, or an excitement. And the same when you go to sleep, of just taking like, oh, I know I'm going to be sleeping, because it's a process that happens.
Yeah.
Like, eventually you're going to do that transition, whether you want to or not. So it's like realizing what's your experience of that transition, because that you're having that reaction. Like there is that reaction. Most of us pretend like we don't think about it, that there's that reaction happening. But there is something, and it's realizing, what is that reaction? Because once you start noticing it, then you can start adjusting it, playing with it. It opens up stuff of like, oh, wow, I'm afraid to go to sleep. That can turn into a whole bunch of stuff, or a whole bunch of opportunity. But
or you can just look at it as different vibrations. And if you learn if you learn what it's like to wake up in that relaxedness of parasympathetic, you can start teaching yourself to have that right before you go to sleep, which will take you into sleep state easier.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's like we're doing it all. I mean, it's, we're all doing sleep. We're all doing awake. We're all doing parasympathetic. We're all doing stress. Like we're doing all these energies, and it's realizing you're doing it already and then starting taking masterful control of it is the game changer. But realizing like, hey, you're doing it. You got it in spades. We're just not paying attention. So the next one to not do, or paying zero attention to your dreams, because your dream state is, I mean, that is kind of like all the information that you've taken in, and then your body or your mind, your spirit, unconscious is doing the replay, but you're all the characters. That's the key twist. Well, you're all the characters, except for every once in a while, there's a glitch, not the people in your life. We won't go, it gets a little too deep, but it's that you're now replaying. It's like the stuff you've taken in and embodied, and now you're replaying it to where you're both sides of the character. So if you're in your dreams beating each other up, that's something inside and it's just realizing that there's a whole theater going on. Like your mind is creating a movie theater each night that you can pay attention to and get like a snapshot of like, what's going on?
So do you study your dreams?
Yeah, dreaming. Oh my gosh, dream stuff is so amazing. Like that was when I created this one process called vibration shift. It's a technology I created where my unconscious mind was used to do energy work in my unconscious. And the way I knew that it was changing is because my dreams changed. Like my dreams used to be like crazy traumatic. I mean, dudes would be coming after me with swords. I'd be cutting their heads off and slicing them, and they'd be stabbing me. And like that was every night was like that. It was like a horror movie, and it was normal for me. But that like crazy changed once I started doing that process to where I actually had like normal dreams. Like they were never normal like that, but like dreams were like just walk down the road and, calmly talk to somebody. I'm just like, what? Oh my gosh, that was the weirdest dream ever. I just talked to somebody.
That tells you so much about your force experience, that you were actually able to connect with your safety and security, and your dreams are telling you that, like, wow, I'm really safe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was huge. And it's like,
now to tell you a little bit about Fracka's childhood is that it was highly traumatic. He went to a school in Pittsburgh where people were, I guess, beat up and knifed on a regular basis at either in or around the school. And so he was in a trauma zone for his first 18 years of life, basically. And, when I met him, he was trying to figure out, well, how the heck do I unwind from all of that trauma? And of course, we were doing energy work together and doing it, but it really felt like a big part of that. You can do energy work and do clearings and things like that, but then you have to find some way that you really integrate your body into something better. And for you, I think it was so much about being in the forest for 3 years and really developing a new relationship with safety and security, which are first and second chakra aspects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a big part was the way in which I protected myself during that time was to separate pieces of me out, and they would basically keep that part separate from my mind that would hold the trauma. And a lot of it was just integrating those pieces back in, of like recollecting all those parts, bringing them back in, growing up to like the current present time. Because safety is all about being in the moment and having awareness. So if you have any part of you that's locked into like a past time of like, oh, this happened at 10 years old and these type of people are this way, that actually reduces your physical safety, because spiritually we're safe. Like, we're good. Like, if something happens, your spirit is going to leave this body and go where it needs to go. And so the part that we think we're that spiritually part is safe. Our physical body its safety is based on awareness and being in the moment. Like, because this body here is only going to get hurt today, right now, in this now moment.
Right.
It can't get hurt by something that happened 10 years ago, not the body anymore.
But we use tons of energy and tons of energy based in fear, believing that repressed part that's separated from us can actually hurt us. And that's the process of getting more conscious is, how do you do that? And to give you a little hint, it's partially intellectual, but it's also partially energetic. And it's partially, as Fracka has been saying, getting in touch with our body.
Mm-hmm. Getting in, the body is most safe in the now moment, because that's when it gets hurt. It gets hurt now. We emotionally and spiritually get hurt. We think of something happened in the past or something in the future that might happen, but the physical body gets hurt in the now moment. Okay. So keeping it safe.
I want to. We have only about 20 minutes left in the show,
mm-hmm.
And what are some of the advanced stuff that maybe we don't have to do all 17? Tell us some of the advanced stuff that is happening in this journey.
Well, I guess this, like, we're amping him up. I'll continue on the list a little bit. We're just some of the techniques of like second guessing yourself in the middle of your play. Like, if you decide I'm going to go do something, and second guessing yourself, where, I don't think this is working, this isn't going to work, is not giving yourself the grace to actually try something until it finishes, and then evaluate, how did that go? I make the analogy of like, if you know anything about football, in the center, he has the football. Immediately, he passes it backwards to the quarterback. If you stopped it right there and said, how's it going? You'd be like, well, we messed up. We went backwards. The whole job is to go forward. So it's realizing of like not cutting yourself off in the middle of a play. Like, give yourself the ability, like, I'm going to go and try to build this business. I'm going to go and try to talk to that person. I'm going to try to go and let that completely play out, and then look at it, then evaluate, did that work or not work? As opposed to in the moment being like, this ain't looking good. This is bad. This is not happening. So that's actually, it seems very simple, but that's actual very advanced
it is, because
technique to get into.
You're really talking about judgments. You're trying to define and rationalize and justify and judge something as good or bad.
Even before it's done.
And it always kind of limits you.
Yeah, it's like having the allowance of like, let it play out. Let it at least play out until the end. And you could look back and be like, oh yeah, wow. It looked like it wasn't going right, but it completely flipped.
Yes.
So, and that's also like another one is a test. It's on my list of where, like, how do you respond? Or one of the in the list, it's like, getting completely mad when your plans change. But the thing is, like, if you're not open to your plans changing, how does your life change? Because if you think of like, oh, like this is my life, I want to radically change to something else, whether it's like a relationship, it's finance, or physically, your life is going to be radically different.
Yeah.
But if you're not open to your plans changing, like, I can't not go to the same Starbucks at the same time and get my exact same drink. Like, if you're not, and the plans change, the traffic shows up, the plane is late, but you're not open to any type of change there, how are you going to change and get to your future goal, your future place, your future? So it's it's just how it interferes with change. Sorry, got me off.
You get stuck in time and space.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm gonna continue on the list. So let's keep going. So back to that one is assuming you're never where you're supposed to be, or assuming you're never at the level you're supposed to be. And that's another way to completely trash the energy out. You're like, oh, I'm not far enough. I'm not this. I'm not that. But the reality is, but that's where you are. You can only move from where you are.
Yeah.
Like if I'm in Pittsburgh and I'm like not supposed to be in Pittsburgh, well, how do I get to where I'm supposed to go if I don't accept where I'm at right now? And like trying to get, and that's the same thing of like being embodied where you're at. Because once you get there, once you get like, okay, what am I? And that's the same thing of feeling now of like, I want to feel this different place. I want to feel this different feeling. I want to feel this different sensation. It's getting clear as to like, well, where are you right now? You got to have that willingness, the openness to be like, well, what am I feeling right now? But if we're wearing a spacesuit and not feeling anything, it's really hard to be like, oh, well, am I supposed to go forward or backwards? Where is that?
Basically, you're saying that the universe and your environment is giving you a type of consciousness that helps you have information to make your decisions from.
Absolutely. Like we are guided. Like your feeling centers work. Like we can't, like all your abilities are working and they're just being used in ways that don't work or being turned off. Like it works. Once you get in the moment, once you get like where you're at, what you're actually feeling and okay with it, like it's okay to be like, I'm completely pissed off. You don't have to stay there. That's not enjoyable, but just being like, this is what's going on. Then you can move from it. You can be like, oh, that's what I'm feeling. Let me choose something new.
Yes. And I love this from Carrie Langdock. I call that doubt versus commitment, confidence, the frog or car in the road. Pick a direction or go for it. And the other being cooperates, senses and moves as it needs. Hem and haw and send mixed vibrations and you'll collide. It's so true.
Yep.
Sometimes you just have to say, what's the energy of me of doing this? And if it feels light, you jump on it and you go do it and not worry about where it, if it's, right or wrong. You just do it. Just like when you said, I'm in a high-rise in Pittsburgh, and I'm going, wait, you went from living in the woods and isolation to living in the right middle of a huge city. It's like, oh, it works for me. I feel great. I like the energy of the air, and I love the way it's way up, and it just feels wonderful. It's like,
well, it's the experience of polarity is part of that. Yeah. Part of that is just the experience into polarity and being okay with nature and being okay with city.
Yeah, and it's just right for you. It shows up. If it feels light in you, then you might want to listen to it.
And this is the way, like, this is like kind of like the list of, is to start unwinding to where you can get to that innate knowledge, that innate information.
Yeah.
So continuing on, number 10 is the way to completely trash your energy is never talk back to yourself. And sometimes you just got to talk back to yourself. Sometimes you're going to say stuff to you that are crappy. That's just crappy stuff you'd never say to someone else. And you just got to talk back to that. It's just, you got to be like, no, that's not okay. No, that's not. And part of that is with the dream work of really, like, I do that with my dreams. Now I'll go back and edit, where if someone's attacking me in the dream or I'm attacking somebody, we have a sit down. I go back and be like, whoa, hold up.
So if you get self-critical and you tell yourself, well, it was a really dumb idea to live in Pittsburgh, how do you approach yourself on that?
Well, I call it, you check yourself. You just be like, no. Well, we're going to sit down. We're not going to attack ourselves or judge ourselves or say horrible things to ourselves. We could come back and be like, okay, we can have a discussion as to, like, well, in what ways? But most of the time, like 99%, that's what I'm saying, like, you never talk back to yourself, is actually check them. Because a lot of times when people are saying hateful things, or if you're saying them to yourself, there's no, like, base in reality. It's more fear saying, like, well, you just suck. You're like, well, in what ways? How do I suck? Well, just because. That's just the fear reacting. So, but it's that whole process of, like, whoa, wait a second. I'm not going to say mean things to myself. I'm not going to trash myself. Because when you start sensing, slight vibrations and different energies, you've got to be able to trust yourself. I sense that. Doesn't mean it's permanent. It doesn't mean, oh, I sensed it and now I got to go do this action. But it's just trusting that, hey, I sensed something. And not have, like, this negative voice of, well, you sensed it wrong and this didn't work and that, because that's really hard to open up to when you got that happening. So it's like talking back and be like, hey, no.
It's kind of like your shadow. And the best thing to do with your shadow is, know where it comes from and what started that voice. And then when you really got to know it well, then maybe you just look at it and go, oh, it's you. Hi. Do you have anything relevant to tell me? If not, I got other things to do.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You just got to talk back, and sometimes it might have good info. It might be like, hey, this, and this has happened. You're like, oh, cool. But if you just accept the negativity, yeah. So another one is, this is one, definitely if you want to trash your energy, just repeat that the universe or God is against you. Just say that over and over. Universe is against me. God's against me. So that's a perfect one to completely trash. Obviously, the opposite is to not do that. Not assume that the universe is conspiring against you or God's conspiring against you. Is to actually flip it of, how is this working in my favor? How, what signs am I getting? It doesn't mean that everything's perfect, everything's going great, but where am I being led to? And it's opening up that sensing of, like, oh, I'm sensing, like, oh, that's too hot. Oh, maybe I'm being directed to go over there. Because that, like, once again, is that innate sense that knows what's right for you. And you're starting to tap into that. But if you assume that the creator of all things is against you, it's really hard to tap into that, because that's the ultimate wound that you're going up against, is that, I'm ultimately unloved.
I think that's one of the new paradigms that consciousness is breaking out into, is because that was the old paradigm that God is judging and God will punish you. And we've been living that for the last 2,000 years or so. And what freedom it is to say, no, we're all together and we all support each other. Even through our mistakes, we see our beauty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the creator of all things, or if the universe was against you, oh, your life would be way worse. Because I could think of a ton of things to make your life worse if I had omnipotent and superpowers. And God's definitely not doing that to us. So just, I can think of way more things it could do. So we're not getting inspired against in that sense. Not from the top to top. Another one, okay. This is another, like, kind of big energy change, and it's not paying attention to the moon. So, like, just with astrology, whether you believe it or not, there is an energy. There is an energy signature to the moon, to the sun, to all the stars and planets. We come in as it. Doesn't mean it's prescriptive of like, there's this energy, you have to do that. But the moon is a major energetic force. I mean, it is bending the water. Like our tides are from the gravity of the moon pulling the water. So and we're what, 70% water? So you've got a major gravitational force pulling on our water consistently, besides other stuff, besides reflecting the sun, doing all that. So not having some awareness of the moon, of like where it is in space, how does it affect you? Does the full moon affect you? Does the new moon affect you? Because there's a huge energy to that. And it's not that the full moon's going to do this, the new moon's going to do that. But it's just noting that you've got a major celestial body that's constantly in change, doing stuff to you, causing like this pump, causing changes in you, and just becoming aware of like, well, how am I affected by that? How does the moon affect me, and in what ways? So that's another one. Let's pay attention to the moon, which then moves into the other big one, is completely not paying attention to the sun. Because holy cow, talk about an energy shift, going from light to dark. It is a complete change that happens across the planet. And that is like and it's like, we want to sense, like, how do I sense like a slight vibration change? But we're ignoring the major quantum boom that's happening with the sun coming up and going away. Like, I mean, all the stuff is different at night, especially like being out in the country or out in the far, like frontier, so to speak. Like it's dark. And there's like, you just stuff you can't do. It's not like you just turn the light on and you can still do it. Like life radically changes, and just realize that the planet is going through that. Like animals get that. Like, you know, it's like, so what does it feel like?
When you study the ancients, they all worship the sun, and for good reason, because it's an infinite source. And so if you really wish to meditate and visualize the sun like within your body, your whole vibration changes. You might think of a meditation where you place the sun in your heart and you feel what you see millions of miles away inside of you. And I call it resonating with an energy. In other words, you can concentrate on an energy outside of you, and it becomes you inside of you. And that's how versatile your body is. Just feel how more infinite you become if you embody that sun. It's amazing. I'm not the first guy who's ever come up with this ideal and concept. The ancients were always bringing in the sun and having this active. It wasn't just like prayers to something beyond them. No, it was something within them.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's a radical change in energy. Like it is. Like, I mean, we're kind of insulated with having the ability to turn on a light bulb, but that is a major change. Like when you don't have light bulbs, like, wow, when the sun goes down, that radically changes what you can and can't do. And then just noticing, like, you can just take it like, well, how do you feel when the sun's going down? Like actually notice, like, when's the sun going down? How do I feel before and after it? Because I can kind of give you an idea of your energies. Because if you're nocturnal based, where I feel safer being in the dark, just notice that. Or if you're like, hey, I can't see what's in the dark, I like it better when it's light. And it's more getting in touch with you, of like, how do you resonate with the sun coming and going? Because it's a major change that happens to everybody. And like, if the sun goes away for all of us.
If you do sun meditations, they're totally different when it's dark. In fact, they're just, not nearly as powerful. And I love this, what Carrie Languedoc just says. I'll put it up there. The sun is the heart center, or the tippereth of the tree of Kabbalah. And it's very true. It is the center of all things.
Oh, yeah.
So having a relationship with it is tremendously enabling for our own connection of consciousness. And we add more energy to our body because we're connected to something else besides just us.
I mean, just on the very practical, all your food's coming from the sun. I mean, we turn off the sun, everybody dies. So yeah, sun is core. But how often do we pay attention that the sun went up, came up, went down? I mean, it's great for building that security, like having a place to be secure. It's just be secure that the sun's going to come up.
Yes.
It does. Every day on time. It's never late. It always comes up, always goes down. And all, I mean, if you put all your safety in that the sun's going to come up and let everything else be variety or just change, like, because if the sun doesn't come up, that's okay. Everything else is going to go away. You don't have to worry about anything else in your life, because if the sun doesn't come up, none of that stuff's going to matter. Trust me.
Okay, Fracka, we got about 3 or 4 minutes.
Okay, we're good. We got 3 more.
Get us to the best stuff.
Okay, so the best stuff, this is kind of all leading up to it, is paying zero attention to the sensations in your body, because your body is always talking to you, and it's talking to you in very like it's really like the whole process of like, well, how does my house feel? How does my car feel? How does that person feel? You'll feel it in your body in a very specific location, in a very specific way. There'll be either a tension, there'll be an expansion. Like there is so much going on in your body, and it's really about.
I want to turn this around. So basically, you're saying if you want to become more conscious, you should be paying attention to what's going on in your body all the time.
Absolutely. Like if you wanted to completely trash your ability to sense energy, just pretend like you can't feel anything in here.
So how does that relate to your mind?
When you say your mind, be specific. What do you mean?
That would be all the thinking. I'm not talking about the brain. I'm talking about the workings going on inside the brain, which is what I call the mind, the active.
It still translates back, because you'll think, but where does the emotion show up in your body or outside your body? Or what does that, like, where are you thinking? Like, are you thinking here? And is it in front of your mind? Is it behind your mind? Is it, because you'll still think in a location in space. And if you take that same thinking and move it to a different location, how does it change? So it's still, you can still do the same, like you got your kind of reference, your body positionality. You can even apply it to your thinking of like, where in my body am I thinking? How, in relation to my body, where's my thoughts? Which direction does my thoughts go? And that gives you so much information, so much feedback. So you can still use your body for thinking.
So you're saying that a lot of your thoughts don't really come from your mind.
Yeah, I feel like it's more of like an antenna. Like this is kind of like a big giant antenna, and consciousness is coming through, and we can tune in and pick up different spots, different parts of it. But it's less of that we're actively thinking, so to speak, versus picking things up and realize that there's stuff through us thinking, and we participate in watching it happen.
So if there's a practice and able to enable it, because we've just got about 2 minutes, what's a good practice to do to be able to get in touch with that type of reality?
So good. It's my number 16 on the list, Bart.
All right.
Perfect thing. It's spending zero time or not even taking 5 minutes to listen. And this is all about meditation of like, we put all these requests. I want this, I want this, I want that. And not taking the time to listen, to meditate, to go inside and just let it go. Be calm. Just kind of remove our thoughts and what shows up, what comes through. Just 5 minutes.
Empty space.
Breathe. Sorry, go ahead.
Empty space.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say like just take, and it's not even like a specific technique. It's just like take 5 minutes, set a clock. If I've been doing like 8 minutes and 17 seconds, because I like that, of like, I'm going to set attention. I want to get an answer to this. I want to learn more about this. What should I be focused on? And just breathe and let that info come to you. Listen to the higher power, to a source. Let the answers come. All the answers that you want, let them come in. It's kind of like going to Google, putting in your Google search, and then hitting enter and walking away from the computer. Get the results.
So you got a few more seconds left before we do endings. What's number 17?
17 is absolutely and positively ignoring what is. There is a reality of what happens. Pay attention to it. And a friend of mine, it's like there's our plan versus God's plan. And God's plan is the one that happens. So you might think that I'm going to have this occur. Okay, what actually happened?
So I got to ask this question. We got just a few seconds. How do you get in touch with God's voice?
Well, I'm not sure about the God's voice. I'd be listening, but look what shows up in your life. Like that's what being what is what showed up. I mean, a perfect example is us. Like whether our parents loved us or didn't love us, guess what? Somebody wanted us here and we showed up. And
Awesome.
what happens in your life shows up.
Awesome. Thank you. That's a great explanation. And this is the United Public Radio Network, 107.7, and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3. And this is Bart Sharp with Becoming Quantum Consciousness. And I just want to thank Fara Future being here and giving us all of this great guidance on consciousness and being able to sense our body and to sense what's out there. Fracka can be found, the best way is just to Google him at fracka.com and get to see some of his great work that he puts out there and energy work, websites. He's a master at so many traits that you would be amazed at all the talents and abilities that just oozes out of this guy. He's really incredible. Now, next week, I'm going to be in lovely France, and we're going to be having a shift. In other words, for the next 11 weeks, we will have people from France and the UK as guests on the show. And as we drop into a totally different energy of French energy and French time. And so next week, we have Staying Awake in Relationship with Alethea Pista Sophia, who is really amazing, a great leader in consciousness in the UK and France regions or countries. So I'm really looking forward to that. And thank you so much, Fracka, for being here today. And we'll see everybody next week. We'll say
Thank
bye.
you, Bart. Thank you, everybody. Be blessed.